Temp check. What kind of summer are we having this year? A family road trip summer? A beach bum summer? Or a wake me up when the sun sets summer? With Instacart, choose your own adventure and skip the shopping side quests. Where available, you can get ice cream delivered to your hotel, sunscreen to the pool, or cold brew to your bed. Well, door, in as fast as 30 minutes. Wherever you find yourself this summer, you can get the goods. Download Instacart for free delivery on your first 3 orders. Offer valid for a limited time. Minimum $10 per order. Excludes restaurants. Additional terms and fees apply.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room? It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th.
We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
So before we start the episode tonight, we do have a request for you.
Our first episode in October will be our 1-year anniversary, which we are so excited about. It's so wild, and we want to celebrate with you guys.
So do you have a fun story to tell us about a movie that we've covered that traumatized you as a kid? Are you a former, potentially a future guest, and your film was already taken? Or do you just want to tell us hi and that we're badasses?
I mean, obviously, but we like to hear it from you.
We do.
If so, please send us a short audio clip and we might include it and talk about it in our 1-year anniversary episode.
Yeah, instructions and the link to the Google submission form will be included in our show notes all September. And if you are following us on our Twitter account, which is @ScarredPodcast, we are talking about it all the time. So as always, thank you so much for listening.
And on with the show.
And welcome back to Scarred for Life, the podcast where we open up old wounds by looking back at the films that scared us as kids. I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth.
Each episode, our special guest brings with them a movie that traumatized them as a child.
This week, our guest is horror writer and co-director of the Bloody Mary Film Festival, Laura Girolamo. You've seen her writing in places like Rue Morgue and Grimm Magazine. Welcome to the show!
Hi.
Yeah.
Yay!
We're really excited to talk to you, especially about the movie you brought
Me
today.
too.
But before we do that, let's take it back to the beginning. How did you get into horror?
So I was thinking about this the other week, and I get there. I feel like there's no one moment, but when I was a kid, I used to see scary things, and then they would scare me so much I would want to figure out what they were. So my mom would take me to the grocery store with her, and I would see Goosebumps book covers in the grocery store because they had a little book section, and they would scare the shit out of me, and I would be I would want to hide behind my mom, but also intrigued, what are these weird eggs in this mask? And then also going to there was 2 Blockbusters within a 10-minute walk of my house growing up.
Hell yeah.
It was great. So a lot of Friday night movie nights, and I would just kind of wander over to the horror section and look at all the covers and be like, what is this stuff? And I was also a bookworm as a kid. I was one of those kids that was bored of school, so just read under their desk all the time, and definitely read a lot of books that were too advanced for me about alien invasions and terrifying stuff like that.
Oh wow!
So
I was going to ask, it was Goosebumps and stuff, but it sounds like you went to the hardcore stuff with reading.
Yeah, I was 8. Yeah, I definitely read books above my grade level for a long time that were maybe not, that still scare me today. And I think back, who let me do that? adults in the 90s were just like, yeah, do whatever you want. We don't care. She's reading.
Read Stephen King. It's fine.
Yep.
You'll be fine.
I read Anne Rice when I was 11.
Yep, I did too.
Yeah,
and I was like,
think
this
we all
is
did.
weird. I was like, this is weird, but like, it's cool. And my family's like, yeah, it's totally fine. It's vampires. I'm like, have you even read these books?
Yeah,
like,
I was like
no.
reading like the Mayfair Witches ones, which are just, they're like 400 pages of just sex. And I'm like, my mom didn't even, there's like naked women on the cover of this book. My mom was like, she's so smart.
It's so funny. There was like one time where I actually got in trouble for the book because like I was reading all these books, right? And so I had a friend and I lent Jaws to him, and I guess her parents read it. And the book in Jaws, there's like a part where the wife has an affair with Hooper. And like, there's actually a part in there where like he is describing her vagina, and like her mom got so pissed at me for lending this book to her, and I didn't even think anything of it. Because like, I've been reading this stuff since I was like 8.
Yeah, it's so weird. It's like when you meet people who haven't like seen The Simpsons growing up, and they're like, "Oh, my mom wouldn't let me," and I'm like, "Oh, my mom let me watch South Park when I was 10," until she tuned in for one episode and was like, "Maybe this is the best thing."
My parents wouldn't let me watch South Park when I was 18. So.
It is so weird, like what parents will keep you from watching, but like it's like weird because sometimes my mom was like, it's not all rated R movies, it's just some of them, and it was very arbitrary. And I was like, okay, like that's fine, whatever. And then I started buying my own movies at Borders, rest in peace Borders, and like she just like never could keep track anymore of what I bought. And then it was just like she just stopped caring.
Yeah, that's more or less what happened. I think they realized that I was such a voracious reader. I was gonna read out the entire library, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. And that also I was gonna watch a lot of spooky movies, and there was nothing they could do to stop it.
Yeah. So what were some of your favorite horror movies and books growing up?
Growing up, I always really liked, I liked a lot of the sort of quasi-fantasy type stuff. Like, I really love Neverending Story was a favorite. Dark Crystal is another movie that scared the shit out of me and does to this day, because I watched it when I was 4, which is way too young to watch The Dark Crystal. But yeah, I really love that movie, and, Labyrinth a little bit less, but still as much. I really loved Arachnophobia, which also came out in the same year The Witches did.
That's so funny. Terry is terrified of arachnophobia.
I'm not afraid of spiders, but I was terrified of arachnophobia.
I am afraid of both. Like that. That was like the first episode that we did was on that, and for Mary Beth it was Poltergeist, and I was dreading watching that movie for this podcast because I cannot stand that movie.
Yeah, it's the part that always used to scare me is when oh god, I don't know why I can't remember his name right now. The guy that's in everything, John Goodman. When John Goodman gets like molded to that huge spider web. So that always used to freak me out. But yeah, some of those. Obviously Tim Burton. I saw a really great meme today. It was a picture of Nightmare Before Christmas, and it was like, "This is why your sister's goth." And I was like, "Yeah, story checks out."
That is exactly true.
Do you remember what your first horror movie was?
Oh, I don't know. It might have actually been Arachnophobia.
Oh, really? Oof.
I don't remember. It would have been a long time ago. I remember my mom was like sort of into the X-Files for a little bit when I was a kid, and I think she would like watch it, and I would just like peek around the corner of the door frame when the scary parts happened. So yeah, I watched some of that when I was growing up. Yeah, I don't remember. I think maybe something like Beetlejuice or something. It would have been like a sort of not kids type horror movie, but I watched like a lot of those as a kid, like the kind of entry level.
The kind of
spooky movies.
horror.
Yeah, like Hocus Pocus. I love Hocus Pocus.
Yeah. I had the similar experience with X-Files where like my parents I would hear the theme song and I would run out of my room to watch the beginning.
I would hide.
I'd be like, yes! I'd be so scared. But then I would be like, I have to see the guy falling into the handprint. Like it's like so it's like a specific memory of that opening sequence, and then like always getting terrified. My mom was like, you have to stop doing this. And I'm like, I can't help it. She's like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah, I was really afraid of aliens as a kid. I think probably because of X-Files, and I was afraid of E.T. Even now, I'm like, he's ugly. I don't know why people think he's cute. but I was terrified. And I remember once I had a nightmare as a little kid about E.T., and I woke up and I went to get my mom, and my mom was like, "Oh, what happened?" And I said I had a nightmare, and she said, "What was your nightmare about?" And I said E.T. And I think it must have been like 4 a.m, because my mom was like, "Oh, you had a nightmare about Entertainment Tonight?" Which I used to watch with her as a kid. It's probably also what got me into movies.
That is so funny.
She doesn't remember. I tell her this story all the time, and she doesn't remember because it was like 25 years ago, probably. But
and 4 a.m.
And at 4 a.m, I don't even think she meant to say that, but it makes me laugh so much.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
So, what as an adult draws you to horror now?
I think really similar stuff, actually. I'm not like a big slasher person, just because, unless they're kind of meta, like, something like Cabin in the Woods or whatever, just because, sometimes I get kind of bored of the same genre. So the ones that are like pretty self-aware I'm into, but I really like sort of black comedies. I really like sort of esoteric, weird art house horror, like In Fabric or like the new Suspiria, like that kind of stuff that's like on the edge of kind of camp sometimes.
Okay.
Like fantasy horror, I really like. Horror that has like a really strong visual style, I really love. All the sort of, the beautiful kind of spooky stuff. Crimson Peak, obviously. Obsessed with that movie. I just really love like kind of that dichotomy between like terrifying, sort of crazy, brutal horror stuff and then like really beautiful like aesthetic and music and things like that. And I think it's really cool movies that can mesh those two things together and like tell really beautiful visual stories that are like weird and creepy, because I think it makes a lot of other things in the movie even more weird and creepy if the visuals are so beautiful.
Yeah. And I saw you just saw Climate of the Hunter for Fantasia.
Yes.
And that it's like I saw that you said it was your shit and I was like, yep, that movie is so weird, but it's so good.
Yeah.
Like
Exactly.
So I just wanted to bring that up because I saw you post about it. I'm like, that is exactly what that is.
Yeah.
The movie is so idiosyncratic that like some people either love it and some people hate it.
Yes.
I'm all three of us I think love it.
I loved it
too. I loved it a lot.
It's so weird and good. It's just like fucking bizarre and it's amazing.
It's so the like narration at the beginning of each meal about what they're eating, like this is so weird. I love it so much.
Oh,
it's so weird.
It's just like I really love when like people speak weirdly in horror movies and this like stilted, unnatural, like Tilda Swinton in Suspiria, like what just her face all the time and like her dramatic head turns. Like I love this the sense of like beautiful unreality in some of these horror movies.
Hell yeah. That's such a good way to put it.
Yeah, they're all like, I recommended In Fabric to a friend a couple days ago, and she messaged me today being like, well, I didn't understand this movie. Please explain yourself.
And you're like, what? It's a killer dress, and it's weird.
I was like, I don't understand it
either.
either, but did that sales lady not make you laugh a lot?
Exactly. I'm with you there.
Yeah, it's great.
Do you still, I mean, it's like when you watch horror movies for like a living or like you watch it all the time, we sometimes kind of get jaded. Do you still get your childhood fear watching horror, or are you jaded? Like
I'm pretty
like
jaded. I'm pretty jaded.
Yeah.
Almost nothing freaks me out anymore. I kind of wish it did. Certain like I watched. Speaking of things, we just watched because I'm also covering Fantasia for Exclaim, which is a Canadian music and movie magazine, and I just did Come True, which I don't know if you guys have seen. But
oh my god, we were just talking about Come True.
So the end is awful.
I wanted to ask you about this. I fucking hate the ending,
and
it ruined the
it really
ruined the movie for me.
The last like half an hour of the movie, I was like not super into, but her nightmares scared the shit out of me. Like the weird glowing men, because it felt like I used to have sleep paralysis for a little bit when I was a teenager, and it's kind of gone away now. I think it must have been like a puberty thing because I got it when I was like 13, 14, and it kind of went away by the time I was like 16 or 17. But that's what my sleep paralysis looked like. It would be like shapes and their eyes would glow. And I knew it wasn't real. I knew it was a nightmare, but I wouldn't be able to get out of it. So it was extra scary. So I really liked that movie. Did that sort of visual like really accurately, I thought. But yeah, the end was like what? It had nothing to do with anything.
Wet fart.
There was no...
It's a wet fart.
Yeah.
nothing to do with anything that had happened, and I was so bad because I loved the beginning. I also had I continue to have really bad nightmares as an adult, and so whenever there's a movie about nightmares, I'm like, I have to watch it because like I want to see how they represent nightmares, and I was like so into it. I was so excited, and then the ending happened, and I was like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, no, it made me so angry, and I'd been like pre-warned because I'd seen like a couple of people like tweeting about it, like, oh, it's amazing, but the ending, holy shit! And I thought it was going to be aliens because she's like going into the woods and like, they're all the like shapes are kind of there, and it felt like sort of an X-Files-y vibe. And then like, what? I don't know. It just, I feel like maybe they wrote themselves into a corner. But I'm trying to not give it away. But it's an especially cheap ending, I thought.
I know. I was telling someone like, have you seen Sputnik, Laura?
No.
Like, that has a similar problem where it's really good until the end, and I'm like, I just have all these movies where, like, I know exactly where I want it to end, and then I will not watch the rest of it.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, no more after that. I will write my own ending for this movie.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, I'm going to choose to believe, like, the last, like, 5 minutes never happened, I think.
That is exactly how I feel.
Yeah.
That is exactly how I feel. I'm like, don't watch the last 5 minutes.
Yeah,
It's a beautiful
turn it off.
movie. Turn it So that was the last film that kind of scared you or remind you of what it was like to watching scary movies as a kid?
I'm thinking if there's anything else that's like really, well, obviously like stuff like Hereditary just destroyed me, as I think it did for most people. I think one of the movies that it's hard for me to go back and watch because it still scares me is The Descent.
Yes.
I'm not claustrophobic, but I'm claustrophobic if it's a small space with lots of people. Like if I'm on like a crowded subway train or something. So I think like, and just cannibalism always screws me up. And there's like a lot of like sort of humanoid people like eating other people in The Descent. And like that freaks me out. I think that's why I can't do a lot of body horror. I think like damage to like the body is really just freaky to me. I don't know. Maybe it like reminds me of my own mortality or something. But that's why I like the beautiful, stupid nonsense. Because it's like, look at this haunted dress. This isn't going to hurt me.
You said it. Okay, I was going to ask you, a mutual friend of ours that I'm not going to divulge their name wanted me to ask you about spooky nonsense and how much you love it.
I love spooky nonsense, yes. It's the same thing. It's like, I love when things are just spooky for spooky's sake and they're just delighting in like the beautiful spookiness of it. Like something like Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow is like beautiful spooky nonsense because it's dumb, right? Like it's kind of just a fun, dumb movie. But it's beautiful.
So
and
good.
It's so great. And just like the set design is so on point and the costumes are so on point. It's like peak Tim Burton before he became a parody of himself.
Yeah, this mutual friend was like, you can make a drinking game of this, of her love of spooky nonsense.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you brought it up, so I'm about ready to take a shot. No, I'm kidding.
Take a shot of my coffee.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's exactly the way I would describe all of the movies that I love so much.
It was Joe, by the way.
I figured I was going to say, was it Joe?
Yeah, I knew it would have been Joe or someone else that Joe also works with that. I'm sure you guys also know who I'm guessing.
So you are the co-director of the Bloody Mary Film Festival. Can you tell us more about that film festival and like what it is and all that good stuff?
So it's it is every year except for this very strange year.
Yay.
It would have been in April, but it's we cover sci-fi and fantasy and horror films that are directed by female identifying Canadian filmmakers.
Hell yeah.
All of our films are Canadian. We show a mix of, it's mostly shorts, because, there's not a lot of women making features in Canada, unfortunately. It's changing. There are a few that are doing a lot, so we have way more to pick from. But we do a lot of shorts, too, because we really like kind of giving more indie filmmakers or like newer filmmakers kind of a shot to get their films screened. For a lot of them, our festival is like the first time that their film is on a big screen, which is awesome.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. It's just, yeah, I started it. I started it with Krista Jasinski, who's my partner, who's a filmmaker, who actually, her and her partner have a film at Salem Horror Fest this year, which is awesome.
Oh, which one?
It's called The Strings.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. That's so cool. I'm giving a lecture at Salem Horror Fest.
Nice.
So I'm so excited.
There's a lot of awesome stuff happening. I can't wait to actually go to it. Like all the films and all the lectures look really, really great. But yeah, the Strings is also definitely beautiful, spooky nonsense. So I recommend that one. But yeah, she and I started it. I kind of had the idea for it, and I met her through like a mutual friend who was like, you should talk to my friend Krista. She's kind of interested in the same thing. And we were both just sort of frustrated with all of the horror film festivals we were going to and how much of the programming was so male dominated. And even something like TIFF, where like, you know, it has TIFF, you know, if I'm from Toronto, if you talk to a Toronto film person about TIFF, we have a lot of feelings.
Especially this year, probably, because TIFF is fucking it up this year.
Yeah,
but
like,
anyway.
and there's so like Salem and like Fantasia, which has been a really great virtual experience, have been doing it so well. So there's like no excuse, but yeah, that's a whole, like, yeah, it's just, it felt very like boys clubby, and we were like so sick of that because there was so many other amazing films that were being directed by women. We started it the year The Babadook came out because I saw that at Toronto After Dark, which is a big horror festival here. And I like, it was so popular they needed to add 2 screenings, and I just like white knuckle like sweat through my clothes through the whole movie.
Oh wow!
They did another screening of it after immediately after my screening because it was so popular and it sold out. And I saw a friend of mine in line, and she was like, "Oh, how was it?" And I was like, I can't even talk right now. But I saw it, and it was such a like, it speaks so uniquely to like female fears, like the fear of, you know, obviously there's men have like a fear of fatherhood, but there's so much like being a mother, and like motherhood is so loaded and such a loaded thing, and it's so expected that like you have a kid and then everything, you know, your life is going to be super perfect and this kid is going to bring so much joy to your life. So to have like a realistic depiction of like a woman who's like unraveling because maybe she isn't a good mother, maybe she doesn't know how to be a good mother, and like all the kind of shame and weirdness that comes from that. And I was just so like blown away by it. And I was like, there has to be other films like this that are like very specifically speaking to like a female experience. So that's why we started the festival, and it's been really awesome. And I've kind of found a lot of really cool small gems that I didn't know were there before. And it's also like, I feel like we have helped build like helped build a Canadian female horror filmmaking like community, because we get a lot of people that come to the festival, and there's a lot of like post chatting after screenings and stuff, which is also really awesome. And filmmakers always like meeting each other. And we've had like an opening night party that's really cool and awesome, and everybody likes to socialize there. So it's, yeah, I think one of the reasons we didn't really also want to do it virtual this year, like a lot of other festivals are doing, is just because that like in-person networking experience is so important for our festival. Just it's such a good way for other people, I feel, who really want to see more diverse voices in genre to like come together, see a whole bunch of films, a lot of which they might have never heard before, and then just talk about them and chat about them. And we try to screen a lot of pretty diverse stuff. Like we've had pretty straight like genre stuff that's like body horror. We had a musical last year that was a stop motion puppet musical about a couple that buys a condo and then they turn into fish. So just
that sounds
whole
amazing.
gamut of weird things. We have stuff that's like more experimental, stuff that's animated. We had another animated film last year that was like a student animated film about a substitute teacher who's like an assassin. That was very cool. So we try to get like kind of weird and quirky with it. They're not, some of them aren't necessarily like straight horror, but I would categorize them as like genre because there is some sort of, you know, weird supernaturalness happening to them.
That is so cool. That is amazing.
Thanks.
Like just being like, fuck it, I'm going to start my own film festival and like we're going to just give these people voices and start a community. Like that is just so cool.
Thanks. Yeah, I didn't know what I was doing at first, but it's once you do it,
I can imagine.
That's why I was like, I need a person to do it with me because, and then my first thought was like, oh, we could just like screen it in like the back room of a bar and it'll be like all experimental stuff. And then Krista was like, no, we should like rent a theater and do the whole thing. I was like, oh yeah, I guess we should do that.
And you're like, oh, I guess that is a possibility.
Yeah, I guess it's a possibility. There's like so much imposter syndrome at first where you're like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
No one's going to come. Everyone's going to hate it. But the opposite has proved true. So that's been really fun.
Gonna say, yeah. That's amazing.
That's awesome.
So, Laura, what movie are we talking about today?
We are talking about The Witches.
From the incredible imagination of Jim Henson and director Nicholas Roeg comes a fascinating new fantasy adventure. The Witches. For when a little boy accidentally stumbles into their secret world, he finds they've got a lot more power than he ever imagined.
Grandma, it's me, Luke. Luke. They turned me into a mouse. Oh, my. Who's the Grand High Witch?
Join Luke on his remarkable journey. Now, the witches are on his tail.
Whoa.
And he must scurry around their evil plots. Squeak past every danger. Finally setting the trap that will save the world from the witches.
You are in for a treat.
We must stop them.
Oh my god, beautiful nonsense. But not actually nonsense.
90s puppet nonsense.
The Witch is about a young boy who has been recently orphaned, and he's taken to England by his grandmother. At a hotel in which they are staying, a group of witches have gathered to prepare a plot to rid England of all children.
Dun, dun,
And this is based on a book by Roald Dahl, who wrote BFG, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I can always get the Charlie and the Willy Wonka ones mixed up, so I had to make sure. But yeah, so Laura, tell us your horror story about this. How old were you? Where did you see it? Paint us a picture of your experience with the witches.
So I read the book first because, I mentioned, I read a lot as a kid, and I really liked Roald Dahl books because he's I think a noted anti-Semite we know now, but I was 8, I didn't know that. I didn't know he was a horrible racist. But I will give him credit where credit is due for writing some super scary, fucked up books for kids. And I think that also probably why I like scary, fucked up stuff now, because I read a lot of those books. But I think I probably read most of his books. I kind of tore through a lot of them as a kid. And this one was one of my favorites because it really, and it's the same for the movie too. It's one of those kids' pieces of literature / movies where kids aren't safe and bad things can happen to kids. And in the book and the movie, like, creatively horrifying bad things happen to kids. It's not that they just get, murdered or whatever. Like, one of them gets sucked into a painting, which always creeped me out.
What? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, that one's in the book. The book has a bunch of other, the book just starts with the grandmother being like, okay, so there's witches and they want to kill you. I'm going to outline 7 children from my Norwegian village who have all been killed by witches. And here's how. One of them gets turned into a porpoise. One of them turns into a rock, and they describe his skin turning walnut texture.
Oh God!
And it's and there's all these drawings. I don't know if I'm sure if people are familiar with the Roald Dahl books, they all have that very distinctive drawing style. They were illustrated by this guy named Quentin Blake, and they're all really creepy. And his illustrations for the witches are really iconic because it's very much Angelica Huston from the movie, where she's in the long black dress and just a very elegant long haired woman, and then her face is all worms and stuff underneath. So that haunted my dreams as a child, that picture of her taking off her face and she's all has a scary messed up face. And then I saw the movie. I must have been maybe 10 or around that. It came out the year I was born, actually, so I didn't get to it for a while. But I saw it on the Family Channel, which is I don't know if it's American or not. It's it was the Disney Channel for Canada, I guess. So they would have, I think because it was Jim Henson, they would play some Jim Henson movies on it too. And I watched it, and I watched it towards the end the first time I tuned in, and then I think I watched it again later when it was on TV a couple of years after. But I thought at first it was a Mr. Bean episode, because Mr. Bean's in it, and he's dressed exactly like Mr. Bean.
Yeah.
And but he doesn't, he talks like his normal self. And I was like, what is this movie? And then I kept watching it, and I was like, oh, this is The Witches. And then I actually sought it out and watched it. And I really, really liked it. But that's still that scene of her of her taking her face off. Still, no matter how old I watch it, I'm like, I can't deal with this. It's still freaky. But yeah, that book definitely destroyed my dreams. And the movie, once I figured out it wasn't a Mr. Bean movie, it was definitely the parts where they transform into mice also scared me a lot, because I said, the body horror thing freaks me out.
Yeah.
So And it's just really well done. And it's so, like, even now it still looks pretty good.
Yes, it looks so good.
So I don't think I've seen this movie in like maybe 27 or 28 years. I saw it when it first came out. I would have been probably 9 or 10, depending on when it, because I didn't see it in theaters. I saw it when it was out on VHS. So I was probably 10 when I saw it. You know, watching it now, I was immediately transported the moment the music started. Like, I was immediately brought back to being a kid watching this movie. And because honestly, if you had asked me before I had watched this as an adult, I would have said this was about a kid in a boarding school. Like, that is my memory. My memory is that he was in a boarding school. Like, I don't know if I like mix this one up with something else, but in my mind, he was going to a boarding school, and like the headmistress was Angelica Houston.
I mean, the hotel kind of looks like one.
Yeah.
From the inside.
It does.
I can get that vibe.
But
yeah.
So the thing is that like watching this now as an adult and remembering myself as a kid when I first saw it, there were two things that I wanted to like bring up. The first one is that the painting, the girl in the painting.
It's so horrifying.
It's so horrifying, but I remember when I was a kid, my parents had this painting of this kid on a beach, and he was running.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
He was running towards like the ocean. It was just this kid and the beach. And I remember before seeing this movie that I was always very sad. The painting always made me really sad because I was like, well, where's the parents? Like, this kid's all by himself running like a little kid running to the beach. And like, I started, the moment I saw the girl in the painting, I was immediately transported back that after I saw this movie, I would pass that painting and I'd give it a side eye.
Yeah.
I'd be staring at this painting like, is that kid going to move somewhere?
Oh my God. I did the same thing whenever, I don't know if there's a specific painting, but I remember if I would be like at my grandmother's house or something, she had like a few of those very like Italian type whatever paintings of a girl. Mm-hmm. And I'd be like, is she going to get older? Is she going to look at me? It also makes me think of like, you know that Stephen King book, Rose Matter? Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's like another creepy woman in a painting thing. So it's, I don't know, it's like, that book and that movie are so scary to me because it's like there's a part in the movie where there's like one witch in like the convention hall who's like, we'll just poison them, and she's like, no, you idiot, people will catch us, like you have to be sneakier. And it was just like, when you're a kid, you're taught like, don't talk to strangers, all this stuff, but you don't think that it really kind of preys on the idea that like you don't really know who to trust as a kid, and like this nice looking woman could be, you know, she could want to turn you into a mouse and you have no idea. So it made me think like, oh God, do I not trust paintings either?
I know, right? Like that, it's freaky. It's freaky to think about that. Like the kid in that painting is someone, and they're eventually going to grow old and die.
Yeah.
Like that's
how scary is that?
Existential.
You're just in the painting and you're just watching your family while you're trapped in there.
Oh God,
for decades.
Jesus.
The other thing that I kind of got in trouble because of this movie. Because I went on a witch hunt when I was a kid.
Oh my God, Terry.
And I was asking Mary Beth before if I had mentioned this because like this is a memory that until I saw this movie, I didn't put two and two together that it was because of this movie. But it's something that like I think back on all the time because there was a neighbor across the street. She was a little old lady. And she wore sunglasses outside. She was very like dainty. She had gloves on.
The gloves.
Yes, exactly. And I got it in my head that she was a witch.
Oh my God.
Oh.
And I convinced a friend of mine that she was a witch. And listening to Helga explain what you need to look for to find a witch, we would walk by her when she was out in her yard to see if she would cover her nose. She kept to herself, and like she would she gave off this like air of like not liking the kids, which again, we were being obnoxious brats because we thought she was a witch. So one day we decided, we tracked her movements, and we decided to...
Oh my God,
you tracked her movements.
We tracked her movements like a bear.
I was firmly convinced that there was going to be a cauldron in her living room. And
oh my God.
So when we thought she was gone, we climbed over a fence. Cause like there in Alaska, when we lived, there were like, everyone had like these power boxes in their yard. So you could like climb on top of the power box, which you shouldn't be doing, and then climb over the fence into someone else's yard. So we did that into her yard. And she was in there, and she was staring at us as we were like crawling into her yard. And I remember screaming, throwing my hands up, running through her fence because I could get, unlocked from that side, and hiding under my bed. She never talked to our parents about it, but I was always afraid that I was going to get in trouble for
turn into a painting.
My neighbor.
Now she's a real one though. She didn't write you out to your parents, so really she was a winner.
I know there was no cauldron in her living room. I will say this.
Okay,
you didn't see her toes.
She was probably just like.
That is also true. That is also
hey,
true.
lady, can I see her toes?
For me real quick? Yeah, I remember when I read this. There's a part in the book, like right at the beginning, where it's like, "Oh, you probably think that, like, oh, the women, this woman that I know can't be a witch." But it might even be your lovely school teacher. Why? And she might even be reading this to you right now. Watch her face. She's probably laughing at these words right now as she adjusts her gloves. And my teacher at the time did sometimes wear gloves because she was like very elegant.
No.
So it's like, oh God, the teacher's going to eat me. Yeah, definitely made me scared of women who wear gloves for a significant number of years.
Wow.
Amazing. Wow, Terry. So you're a witch hunter.
So
That's
I was a
good to
witch
know.
hunter as a kid.
Yeah, I didn't sneak into anyone's house to see if they had a cauldron, though.
Man, I am so glad she was there because can you imagine how much in trouble I'd get if I actually was trying to like break into her house? So like
that's like the most like Stephen King-y thing, like Stranger Things situation I've ever heard. I thought that was just in movies, but
and that's what originally brought the thought back to my head was when I saw Summer of '84 a couple years ago, and like where the kids think that their next door neighbor's a serial killer. I was like, I can relate to this because I thought the neighbor across the street was a witch. And so it's one of those things that's like, it's been on my mind ever since then. And watching this movie, it's just like, it all like came into sharp focus. It was so weird.
Yeah, it really teaches you to be afraid of older ladies.
Yeah, it does.
I also love how half the witches in the like crowd scenes are just men wearing dresses.
Oh yeah, we will definitely get to that whole crowd scene.
We wanted to, yes.
But Mary Beth, you didn't see this as a kid, right?
No, so this was my first time watching it because my mom was fucking terrified of this movie, and so she forbade it from the house. She was like, every time we talked about horror movies, she's like, I saw the witches and I can't do it. No, never again. Never again. And so I just like it was like almost like an urban legend at that point. I was like, I don't want to watch this shit if my mom is scared of it. And I can see why, because like I watched it today and it's awful in a good way. I mean that. But like it is body horror central, and like she's peeling off her face and kids are turning into mice and like getting tails chopped off, and it's like, and the beginning his parents die like immediately, and it's just like so bleak. I don't think I expected it to be so bleak because I was like, oh, it's a kids movie, so like it'll be kind of gross, but it won't be that bad. I was wrong. I was just like sorely mistaken. It's just like bleak all the way through.
Oh, yeah. It's I'm happy they went for like, we're just gonna go just as bleak as this book actually is. Because they really
I kind of love that though too.
Yeah,
because I feel like a lot of movies. Well, you can tell us more about how the book goes, because I know so many movies now are just like, oh, we should protect the kids, and this was like, nah, fuck kids, who cares?
Yeah, 90s kids movies, man. They were like, we don't care. Right? We're just gonna be horrifying. There has to be a reason why. Like, I feel like so many people, if you ask them, like, what were you traumatized of as a kid? It's like, oh, the witches, or the Dark Crystal, or like the Never-Ending Story, because they were for kids, but they didn't, I don't know, maybe they just thought kids can handle it, and they just fully went for it. But yeah, it's a pretty dark movie until the end. The end made me laugh. I forgot that the end was like this, because he just like turns back into a mouse, and there's a nice witch, or turn into a kid, and there's this nice witch who does it. In the book, he's like, well, I guess I'm a mouse forever, and mice live for about 5 years, and my grandmother probably only has about 5 years to go, and she's the person that I love most in the world, so I don't mind dying when she does. And that's how it ends.
Holy shit, are you fucking kidding me?
I'm not kidding you, that's how it ends. They still do the thing where they're like, we're gonna go to America and hunt down the witches, but like, he's a mouse forever, and he's cool with it. And she's cool with it. And that's it. That's how it ends.
They actually filmed that ending from what I was looking into. Yeah, and Roald Dahl was very upset that they didn't go with it. They wanted to go with a happier ending because in his mind, he said that this ending was the happy ending because he's going to be orphaned if he's still alive. And so like at this point, they both died at the same time. It was basically, from what I have gathered from doing my search on him, this is what he thought was a happy ending.
Oh my god! I mean, it's sweet, but I don't know if it's a happy ending. But he does seem to genuinely enjoy being a mouse. Also, the mice in this movie are really cute. The little
so
Bruno
cute.
mouse and the little Luke mouse.
Oh,
they're so cute.
I love them. I know. I was like, well, at least they're cute. I don't feel as bad for them because they're adorable and have. And I love how positive Luke is. He's like, oh, it's kind of nice being a mouse. I'm like,
don't have to go to school.
You're a sweet boy.
He's very. I like that he has the like pet mice, so he's like kind of already like stoked to like, oh, being a mouse is kind of fun.
And he's like, I already have all these grand plans to build like an elevator, and then at the end he has all that stuff in the
it's so
house.
cute, and they're singing that little song.
So cute.
Yeah, it's super cute. I also love his grandmother. She's rad.
Witches spend their time plotting to kill children, stalking the wretched child like a hunter stalks a bird in the forest.
Do they hunt you? You said it was an accident.
A very unpleasant accident. You know, when I was younger, I traveled the world in search for the Grand High Witch, but I never found her. I don't really believe that anyone has ever found her.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's talk about Helga.
Let's talk about Helga, because she's a fucking badass.
Yeah, totally. I also want her wardrobe. I kind of just like want to be her when I'm an old lady.
I agree, because I feel like a lot of times in movies and horror movies especially, like old women aren't heroes.
Mm-hmm. They don't get to do a lot.
Like they're usually like frail and sad, or like the villains, but she gets to be like this badass hero, because like she is the hero at the end.
Yeah,
she's the one like helping get rid of the witches, and so I love her. And the fact that she smokes cigars,
my god, yes,
like
the cigars.
I'm telling you, I
my
want
God.
a cigar chomping Helga hunting the High Witch across the world prequel. Like
my
that
God,
is what
yes.
I want. Like a young Helga just like gallivanting across the entire world trying to hunt down the High Witch.
Oh my God,
with
yes.
a cigar in hand.
And
like,
then
this
young
is what I want.
Angelica Huston is her rival, and they're like chasing each other across Europe.
Oh my god!
Yeah, someone make this.
And like, just like I love all of the women in this movie. Like, I know the witches are the bad guys, but like, and we can talk about this later or now. But like, I love the witches. I know they're disgusting, but like, I have a soft spot in my heart for these weird ass women, especially Angelica Huston's character.
Yeah.
So do you want to just jump into Angelica Huston's character?
Yeah.
Is it Huston or Houston? How am I supposed to say her
I thought it was
last name?
Huston. Am I saying it wrong?
Is it Huston?
I want to look it up.
I've heard. I thought it was Houston, but it's obviously not spelled that way.
It
so
is
who
spelled
knows?
like Huston, but I don't know if that's how you say it.
Huston.
I don't know. I could be wrong this whole time.
Who knows? She's amazing in this movie, and I love the fact that glamour is used as like a mask for their evilness. So like they conform to these like performative ideas of what women are supposed to look like super glam outfits. Like I love all of their clothes, like a lot of makeup and hats and like big sparkly clothes and jewelry. And then they take off their skin, and that's like the complete antithesis of beauty. And I love how they weaponize beauty to deceive people into thinking they're nice. And I just like love that part of the movie. And I think it's kind of funny too that it's like obviously Helga's the caretaker. And then you have the women who hate children, and I identify with that because I don't really like children. And I was like, I shouldn't identify with the witches, but I really fucking do. I don't want to eat kids, guys. I swear. I don't want to hurt kids. But it's just funny because it's like, they're supposed to be like, oh, the antithesis of the mother and the caregiver, but like you kind of love them in a way.
Yeah, it's like this really, it's like exactly what you said. It's like this really weird, this like very performative femininity thing where it's like, I'm going to be this like sweet woman, and even like their organization, it's like the Society of Prevention of Cruelty to Children. It's like they're so just like we would never hurt a fly. We're just nice little ladies. Like it's very, it's such it is really like weaponizing that whole image of like this is what women are supposed to be, and if a woman looks like this, she's nice, and if a woman looks like that, then she's not nice. And it's like I guess you could say that like, you know, the women are the bad guys in this movie, and I don't know what that necessarily says, but Helga is one of the heroes of the movie. I would say one of the biggest heroes.
Oh, 100%.
So it's definitely I don't know if it's going so far as to say something about like don't trust this like performative femininity because it might all be bullshit, and that what people actually are inside is more important. So I think that's, that might be like the kid-friendly story they were trying to tell. But yeah, it is really cool that they're just like they're playing the game really well.
Well, and the thing that I realized watching it as an adult is that Angelica's character Ava is a drag queen. Like,
yes,
she's a drag
fucking drag queen. Like when she walks on the stage and like presents herself with her arm, it's like RuPaul and like RuPaul's Drag Race. It's exactly like that.
It really is, and like just the idea of like putting on her face and like presenting a specific idea of womanhood, or like even like a kind of like heightened idea of like woman, because she is like put together to the nines, and she is like elegant as fuck when she is wearing her costume. And then of course, what like really hit home is when they lock up the doors and they're like,
"You may remove your shoes. You may remove your wigs."
Okay, audience is gone. Let's untuck. And they're like letting their stumpy feet out. They're like taking their wigs off. They're like, I'm free. I don't have to like present myself as this like beautiful put together woman. I can just like let it all hang out.
Yeah,
like it's such drag.
It is. Over in the gold bar, the witches took off their wigs.
Yeah.
Well, and then like Terry, I told you about this when like when they walk into her hotel room and like her face is on the wig stand like a wig, but it's just her face, and I'm like, this is horrifying, and I love every second of it. But again, like just her face. Just like waiting to put it on, like when like we always say, "Oh, I'm putting on my face like makeup," but she's literally putting on her face. Like my favorite is when she's like pulling it on over her head, and the two women walk in.
Who is this?
You told them to come up after the drinks.
Oh, all right, let them in.
And she's like, hold on. And she like situates it on her head like a mask and like stretches her skin. And it just like is so gross, but so cool.
I love that part where she just like at the beat where they're in like the auditorium and she just peels down just the forehead part.
Yes! Yeah.
Oh my God. It's so cool. Then her nose pops out. Oh my God. It's just like, it's like an amazing reveal. Yeah. Like talking about drag queens. What a reveal. Like, oh my God.
Totally.
And like a drag queen, she has the best insults. Like she can cut people down. From like the brainless bumpkin and the blithering bog vumper. And I know one of your favorites, Laura, is the carbuncle line.
This stinking little carbuncle has had 500 doses.
Yes, I didn't even know what a carbuncle was. No. It's like a wart, I think, but I didn't know what it was when I first saw this movie, and it really increased my vocabulary.
Well, and even when like she's first introduced, one of the witches runs up to her.
Nicola Cuttle, I've been so looking forward to meeting you. You look marvellous.
I wish I could say the same for you, Nicola.
I wish I could say the same for you.
Yeah, she's so bitchy.
Like to the woman. I'm like, good Lord, cut that woman down.
She's so bitchy. Yeah.
I love it. The thing I really appreciated was being able to get her character just through the way that her line delivery. Like when Bruno's dad comes up to her and she's like, "Oh,
But I'd like to say hello to a fellow philanthropist."
You collect stamps?
Her response is, "You collect stamps?" And like, I totally didn't get that joke until like as an adult when you realize that a person that studies stamps is called I don't know how to pronounce it, but a philatist?
Philatist?
This doesn't make any sense. A stamp for
philatelist?
I collect stamps.
But like, just the fact that she wouldn't even register the word philanthropist, because like, why would she? She's this witch that has no care in the world for anything like that. It kind of like is like a hint to like her evilness, that she doesn't even have a care. She's like, what is this?
This RSPCC.
What is this RSP? Cruelty to children. Oh, course.
RSPCC that you're talking about, even though like she's supposed to be like the person that's running it.
Yeah, they didn't figure out their cover story very well.
Well, she just doesn't care.
Yeah.
That's the thing that I loved about it, is that she has absolutely no care in the world about any of this.
No, she's just sort of the like, head of the witches,
right? And the way that she vomits, almost vomits every time she tries to say the word child.
Good,
the word child.
I love how she has a just indistinguishable European accent. Because sometimes I was like, is this a German accent? Is this a French accent? It just like goes in and out, which I also thought was really funny because I thought it's the same performative thing. Like, oh, maybe if I have this like cultured voice, people won't know what I really am.
Right. It's a way of hiding your past and hiding who you are and just like being something that you're not and just like thinking that this is what you should be.
Yeah, this is something that passes.
But then I was also interested in the fact that like Helga has an accent, and obviously like they say she's from Norway, but it was so interesting having these two women who were very distinctly not American, but you know, European, so not too different, but very interesting how they're kind of like pitted against each other. And again, like Helga talks about like hunting her. I want more of the hunting story. We didn't get enough of that. But it's so interesting how it kind of creates this weird lore background with the two of them, and it feels like it's been this like epic battle for so long. And you never get to see that, but in my head I created this like, epic struggle for power. And like these two women who are not American but still European are just like in an eternal battle with each other. And I just really kind of liked that weird vibe between the two of them.
Yeah, it's definitely like it reminds me of a lot of these like women in power struggle type movies. Like what's that Blake Lively movie that just came out a few years ago?
A Simple Favor?
Like something like that, where it's like I really wanted to see that, like a two strong women having a rivalry kind of thing, and one is good and one is evil. And it's interesting to me too how like Helga has a much more natural look. Like she lets her hair go gray. She's kind of just rocking the old lady caftans with like the jewelry. Peak like old lady goals. But it's such a contrast to Angelica Huston's character because she's, polished to the nines. She's got the hair, the lipstick, the makeup. And it's very, I don't know, like maybe it's something about being more comfortable in your own skin because if you have nothing to hide, you don't have to like take it to such extremes with your appearance and your performance. So I always thought that was kind of interesting too.
And I feel like that translates to talking about the mice kids too, because it's like, they transform into little mice, but they're still the same sweet kids who love to eat, and like where like Bruno loves to eat. Like they have the same personalities, and like even if they're not human, they have those personalities, and that's what matters, and like that's what gets them, like saves the day. And so that is really interesting, like the performativeness and like wanting to look a certain way. Maybe it's not like misogynistic, but maybe it's kind of like an anti-performative like patriarchal thing. I don't know. I think I'm thinking too much into it.
This weird children's
movie that is like probably just meant to like be freaky, and I'm just like, what about the patriarchy? But I think it's important to think about because there are strong women in this movie. Like a lot of women are monstrous, but not all of them are. So it is like a little bit more nuanced than just like women bad.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a line in the book that's like the little boy is like, oh, how come witches are only women? How come witches are only women? And aren't there like wizards? And she's like, no, that's stupid. You don't want to know about what male monsters are out there.
Oh my god!
In the book, she's fully like, oh, there's more monsters. I'm just telling you about one kind.
Oh my god! Amazing.
Yeah, it's great.
Holy shit.
Yeah, I like that the movie captured that same terrifying vibe where they just give no fucks about scaring kids. And I like that. Like, I think the world is really scary.
Yeah.
And I think we shouldn't, like, sugarcoat it for children. Like, even if there aren't really witches, or are there, it's not healthy to, like, paint the world as this, like, totally safe, happy place where everyone's going to be nice to you as a kid.
Yeah.
Well, and this is also, like, a time, we've kind of discovered this as we were, like, covering a bunch of, like, kinder trauma in the 80s and into the early 90s, is that, like, this is a time when horror directors would direct kids' movies. And it was, like, it almost was like they were making a horror movie for adults that just sort of happened to feature kids. You know what I mean? So like in this case, you have Nicholas Roeg. I don't really know how to pronounce his last name, but he directed Don't Look Now.
Mm-hmm. And The Man Who Fell to Earth.
Yeah. And like the way this movie looks as an adult watching this, I'm like, this cinematography reminds me of like a bunch of the kind of Euro horror that I would watch. It reminded me of like Possession. The way that the camera would track people in this sort of almost like manic way. I'm thinking of like in particular when in the very beginning when the witch tries to lure Luke out of the tree, and then there's a shot of her walking away with the snake. The way the camera is like manically following her just like reminded me so much of some of the ways that characters were filmed in like Possession and whatnot. And the cinematographer is the cinematographer of The Burning, which was kind of a slasher type movie. So like I'm seeing all of this and I'm thinking that this kind of is why I think it scared a bunch of kids, because it took the idea of being kind of this horror movie for kids and took it seriously and respected the kids and made a movie that just happened to be about kids.
Yeah.
That's wild. More of that, please. Let's bring it back.
let's bring back scaring the shit out of kids.
Ari Aster, make a kids movie.
Oh my god.
Can you imagine Disney hiring him to make a kids movie? That's so amazing.
No, but I want it so bad.
It'd be amazing.
It would be amazing.
Make Hereditary for kids.
Suits.
Oh my god.
Bear suits are cuddly.
Oh my god. That would be absolutely amazing.
So speaking of which, we are getting a remake by Robert Zemeckis. So is this going to be Uncanny Valley territory where like it's like, because didn't he do the Polar Express and like all
oh god
those?
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to this remake at all. I don't think it's gonna be good.
Well, and like I love Anne Hathaway, but she does not have the same like vibe as Angelica I mean, I just don't think you can fill those shoes. I think Angelica Houston has like this camp sensibility about her and is like over the top and campy, and I just don't think of Anne Hathaway that way. And I like Anne Hathaway as an actress. I don't think she's a bad actress, but I don't think she has that kind of like campy sensibility to her, because when I think of Angelica Houston, I think of the Addams Family too. Like she has that kind of gothic, creepy, funny vibe about her, and like Anne Hathaway to me, it reminds me of like a cinnamon roll.
Yeah, and she's definitely in this movie, she's like doing this very like old school Hollywood thing. Like she reminds me of like Joan Crawford or something like that.
Yes.
Like that sort of like that very like glam to the nines. And like, I don't know. I don't think they're going to do that, because I don't think like in 1990, that was, I think like, you know, somebody like Joan Crawford was like the idol of like glam femininity. And like now kids are like, Joan Crawford, who the hell's that? So let's get Anne Hathaway, I guess. And I like her too, but yeah, she doesn't have that like regal sense of presence, I think.
Well, and someone was saying, I don't remember, I haven't read a ton about it, but the remake is supposed to be more like kind of dealing with like white supremacy.
Yeah.
And like, I think because Octavia Spencer is the grandmother, and so it's like a black family, and I guess you're going to lean more into the witch being like, you know, like the Grand Wizard and the KKK, like the Grand Witch. So I'm interested to see how that is going to go in a Disney movie.
Yeah, I'm like I'm wait and seeing on this movie. I'm not holding my breath for it to be good, but maybe at the very least it'll be interesting.
I just don't think Robert Zemeckis is the right choice.
No, I don't think he's a good director, or hasn't been in a very long time.
I don't think so
I think the
either.
last movie of his that I really enjoyed was What Lies Beneath.
Oh, God.
Oh, he did What Lies Beneath?
He did, back when he was
I didn't even know that.
Weird.
making good movies.
I'm not gonna lie, I kind of like that Beowulf movie, just because it was so weird and so it made me uncomfortable, because it was right when he started doing Uncanny Valley, but it worked. It worked for like the fantasy aspect of it, but then he did like stuff like Polar Express, and it's too realistic, and then it upset me. But yeah, I haven't really been a fan of his in a long time. He's very like, I don't know, it's interesting to me that they're gonna do this like sort of white supremacy, like racial message, because I feel like he's such a like Disney-ified director that just makes these like very family friendly, wholesome movies that I don't know, like I feel like he wouldn't take enough risks for it to like actually say something important, but I don't know, I could be wrong.
You know, the thing that I realized watching this too is just how much I think that this movie influenced Michael Dougherty. the director of Krampus, because like I look at Helga and I see Omi from. Have you guys seen Krampus?
Oh yeah,
I have not actually.
Okay.
Oh yeah,
well,
she does remind me of Omi.
There's a grandma in there that like she tells a story about like her run-in with Krampus back when she was a kid.
Please, listen.
English. I knew it.
I must tell you something. To all of you. It started with the wind.
And there's this kid that, like, you know, in that movie, the kid loves Christmas and believes in Santa, even though he's too old to believe in it at the time. And so, like, he talks to his grandma about it, and she has that kind of thick accent, and she's talking about her time, basically her first encounter with Krampus. And I'm watching this, and I'm watching this sort of, like, playful kind of gateway horror-esque vibe that he's going for in that movie. And I'm like, man, this movie, watching The Witches now, after watching that, I can see where like he probably had this as like an inspiration to him. I think he would have made a really interesting The Witches remake. Honestly,
yeah, that would be a good choice. Yeah, I really love, one of the things I love so much about this movie and the book is how much they talk about like folklore and like the folklore of witches and like very like this movie made me scared of Norway because they're very like, oh, there's tons of witches in Norway and they're all out to get you. Here are all the kids I know who died when I was a kid. So I'm like, oh god, they're in those woods. And I always like when I see like Scandinavian horror, like that Troll Hunter movie.
Oh yeah,
yes.
Which is I don't know if that was Norway, but it was like somewhere near there. So it's just. Like, yeah, obviously witches are from Norway because there's all those woods and stuff. They have so many places to hide. So just this idea that like, it's such a European movie and it feels right to me that it all takes place in Europe because it's this very old world thing about like there's these monsters among us. They've been around for like hundreds of years and we just have to coexist with them and live with them. And it is a pretty British movie. There's a lot of Monty Python pratfalls towards the end in the scene where
Rowan Atkinson.
Oh my god, he has a small role, but he's pretty funny in this movie.
He's hilarious.
Also, the chef who gets a mouse up his butt and has to take off his pants is Carson from Downton Abbey.
Yes, and he's also in The Little Vampire. Have you guys ever seen the Disney Channel classic
like
of The Little Vampire?
I haven't seen it since I was a kid.
I was too old for that.
Well, as someone who's obsessed with vampires, this was like my favorite movie as a kid, and he plays the vampire hunter in that movie.
Oh, I didn't know. Bruno's dad is in Outlander. There's a lot of prestige British actors in this movie.
Right though, I was like, wait, hold on. There are some relatively big names like in the background of this movie.
Yeah.
So it's such a weird movie, but like a really good movie, and I hope they keep the practical effects so badly.
Yeah.
Like when she turns into the rat at the end.
Oh my god.
It's just like it's so well done and it looks so good. And I just hope, like we said, that Zemeckis doesn't bring in his weird ass Uncanny Valley animation and they lean into practical effects because that's like one of the reasons why this movie is so good is because it looks like they're witches. Like they're peeling off their skin and it looks like there is a monster underneath that mask.
Yeah. Oh, it looks horrifying. I'm hoping because there's been like a Jim Henson sort of resurgence. Like we had that Dark Crystal remake and everything. Like, which I didn't really like, but as someone who really loves that movie, but I don't know. Like I think practical's maybe making a bit more of a resurgence, but I don't know if it's just like a indie horror thing where it's coming back more. Because I feel like a lot of movies I've seen in the last few years have done like a crazy practical effects thing, but. I don't know. Yeah. Zemeckis might just want to polish it too much for it to have that same appeal.
But like the whole point of that is not to be polished. Yeah. But I guess we'll see. Maybe it'll make sense with his version of the story. But I don't know. It just feels weird to not do practical effects with the witches.
Yeah.
I want Anne Hathaway to have a giant prosthetic nose and her skin to just be kind of dripping off of her face.
Yeah, she looks like a bat
with a testicle chin.
Yes, testicle chin. We need it.
Giant
with like
nose.
errant hair, just like random specks of hair that are coming off her body. Like it looks so good.
It looks so good. I remember like I read the book and then I watched the movie and I was really curious about what they would do and like it's different from the book. In the book, she has like this is like the reason why I could not go back and read this book when I was a kid. I only read it once. They talk about like. There's a picture, number one, but they talk about how there's like holes in her face and there's like a worm that keeps coming through.
Oh, wow.
And like they didn't do that in the movie, and I don't know how much that might have been too far and scared too many little kids, but they definitely went like full for it. Like they did the whole body thing. Like she looks incredible.
The other thing that I'm kind of worried about with the Zemeckis remake, though, is that I did do a little bit of searching, and I did see that he wants to keep it more in line with the book, is what he was saying, and I have a feeling that it's going to end with the kid still being a mouse, and they're going to set off that's going to set up a franchise.
Yeah.
I just have this feeling this is going to be a franchise of them like going to different places around the world to like bring the kid back from being a mouse to being a human. That's what I'm afraid is going to happen, that they're just like doing that Disney thing. So we're going to get another
a bunch of movies we didn't ask for.
Right.
Yeah, like no one needs a sequel to The Witches. We're good with it. It tied itself up its own way. We don't need
Unless we're going to do a prequel of Helga with the cigar chomping. That is what I want to see.
Same.
If it's the prequel of Octavia Spencer as Helga and then Anne Hathaway as the witch, I could watch
I could
that,
do that
though.
too.
Like, I think I could do that.
Both of those actors, I could do it.
I like them. So we'll see. Yeah. So do we want to give this movie a rating out of 5?
We do.
Okay. So Terry, how many stinking little carbuncles out of 5 do you give the witch? The witch is, not the witch. Just one.
This is only part 1 of the episode, guys. We're now
There's
talking
only
about how the
one witch in this movie.
Like proactively terrified Laura as a kid. I hadn't, like I said, I hadn't seen this movie in probably 27 or 28 years, and the feeling of watching this again was like slipping into a warm bed. That's just like, it's so nice. It was so comfy. I think this movie is fantastic. I think it has withstood the test of time. One of the things that I think that there's a little bit that, like, as an adult, you can also appreciate too, a lot of the stuff that went over my head. I mean, we talked about the drag queens. We talked about like the performative gender about it. We talked about some of the themes, but the other thing is that like, I love the Witches Convention is basically like a giant pyramid scheme.
Oh my god, yes.
Like, she's like,
one child a week is no good to me.
We will do better. We will do much better.
Better is no good either. I demand maximum results.
We must maximize basically our profits equal kill all kids. Like, she is like,
here's
you
all this
are
money.
giving me 1 kid a week. This is not enough.
Yes.
Like, it almost reminds me of like those like Tupperware parties, or even like it's just, that's what the vibe is giving me. And I just, it kills me. And she's introducing this new product, this, new formula that's going to like do everything and then some, and it's going to rid them of all their problems. I love this movie so much.
Yeah, it's so great.
I think I am going to actually probably give it, 5 probably stinking little carbuncles out of 5. Because I think it's a perfect movie for kids. I love it so much. What about you, Mary Beth?
So I'm going to give it 4 stinking little carbuncles out of 5. I really did enjoy it. I'm so glad I finally watched it. As many people have listened to this podcast, it's been a lot of me catching up on things I've missed as a child. And I really enjoyed it. I think it was so much scarier than I expected. I think the practical effects are amazing. I think I'm still kind of stuck on like thinking about the gender representations in this film, and like not in a bad way, but like there's a lot to think about, like more than I ever expected. And also I'm coming to this as an adult and probably projecting too much onto it, but like I love witches and horror, and I think this is such an interesting interpretation of witches, and it's so in contrast with what witches are now in film. And so it's kind of interesting to watch this now after we've had like The Witch and Suspiria and Gretel and Hansel. Well, the witch is bad in that one too, but like these kind of like tension between which is evil and which is good, and I think it's really fascinating to look at. So I'm gonna give it 4 stinking little carbuncles out of 5. Laura, you have the final word. What is your rating for the witches?
I think I'm gonna draw it in between the two of you, and can I do 4.5 carbuncles out of 5?
You can.
Yes, you can.
I also love this movie for all of the reasons you guys mentioned. I love that it's this very glam performative femininity, and reveals that there can kind of be monsters inside something that you think is okay or acceptable. I love the grandmother. I love Mr. Bean. I love, and I also love witches in movies, and I think this is like pretty formative for me as like somebody who really liked witches in movies, because it taught me that they can like, they're always like an evil woman, but like how nuanced and how many like how much variance you want to give that is like dependent. And I think this is like a good entry point for like people who are watching movies and want to get their kids to watch witch movies. But I think it definitely like aged really well. There's not a lot of super 90s things about it. Some of like the stylistic choices are very like 90s. Like there's a lot of like chase scenes with like wacky music playing that I don't know if I like love. And I don't like the ending because I think it's such a bleak movie that, I mean, I understand for sales reasons why they might have gone with a happier ending, but I feel like it's more true to the story of like who you are on the outside doesn't matter, as long as who you are inside is, you know, a good person. And I think it fits better if the story ended with him being a little mouse and hanging out with his grandma and then being totally okay with that. So I'll take off half a rotting or stinky carbuncle for that. But other than that, yeah, I really love it. And I want to one day be Angelica Huston for Halloween one day.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I love that.
100%.
I think we should all aspire to be that.
I think so. I think we should. And I want to do like Angelica Houston, but like with my face coming down.
Half
like,
peeled?
Like half peeled. Like that's like the only way to do it. Just the forehead.
Flopped. Yeah. The forehead flopping over.
Yeah.
This movie also made me afraid of convention halls as a kid. It's like never play in empty convention halls, children. You never know who's using it later.
I mean, that's good life advice.
That is good life advice. So. It really is. You never know.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you so much, Laura, for joining us to talk about The Witches.
Thank you guys.
Where can listeners find you? And do you have anything coming up you'd like to share?
Yeah, so you can find me mostly on Twitter. I'm Laura_DIGI, because my last name is a disaster and no one wants to learn how to spell that. I have my website's Laura Digital, and it has kind of all the other stuff I work on. I'm working on... Oh God, what am I doing? Well, Bloody Mary is coming back in 2021. We haven't announced a date yet, but it's coming. So you guys should stay tuned for that soon. I'm working with the Anatomy of a Scream team to launch a podcast network, which is going to be really exciting.
Hell yeah!
Yeah, I'm super excited for that. More podcasts. There's a little podcast project that I want to work on, potentially part of that. So
cool.
This is good practice. And I'm also working on developing / pitching a web series. I'm doing some more screenwriting type stuff, and it's actually going to be with Amelia Moses and Lee Marshall, who had a film at Fantasia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Bleed With Me
is one of my favorites from the festival.
Yes, I loved it. Yeah,
that was aggressive. I apologize.
We're all working on a thing. Oh, I'm so happy that you're excited. Yeah, we're working on like a limited series, web series type thing that's like a horror dark comedy about like telepaths who are in love, and also they have to fight a squid monster in a cottage.
God.
I want this now.
I need it right now. It's like everything I've ever wanted.
Yeah, it's been really fun. It's like an idea that I've been like toying around for a couple years, and we're like shaping it into a web series that I think will be really fun. And it's very like sort of relationship based and like all of that kind of thing, like figuring out your feelings for people and like being vulnerable with people that you love, but also like, oh God, they can hear what I'm thinking. And then there's a squid monster, because I am terrified of squid monsters, and I think they fit really well in a story that's about our subconsciousnesses. So yeah, that's really fun, and I'm pretty excited for that.
Yes, 100%. That sounds amazing. So listeners, you've heard from us, but we want to hear from you. What was your experience with The Witches? You can send us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us directly on Twitter. I'm at MB McAndrews.
And I'm McGailey Dreadful.
And of course, keep the conversation going by chatting with us on Twitter at Scarred Podcast.
And please don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe.
Thank you to Steve Barnold for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. Thank you to everyone for listening. Please stay safe out there, but most importantly, stay creepy.
And until next time.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room?
It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th. We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.